With 7 games remaining on their NBA regular season schedule, the Sixers are at the mercy of the rest of their league for what their lottery odds will exactly look like. Well, we have good news and bad news as the Brooklyn Nets cannot stop winning, with March officially being the month of Drew Timme. On the other side of things, the New Orleans Pelicans are taking their strides to stack the deck in their favor and make sure that the Sixers do not sneak up on them any further in those tanking rankings. So I want to dive into the exact state of the league, why there are some significant implications based on how games around the league have played out to this point, and we're going to take the good and the bad here. So let's start off on a positive note that our Brooklyn Nets cannot stop winning. Another 113-109 victory over the Dallas Mavericks. This comes after they beat the Washington Wizards on Saturday. These are huge wins from the Philadelphia 76ers perspective here. And for this game specifically, the Mavericks had a chance, man. And these are important games for the Dallas Mavericks as they are really trying to scrap their way right into that play-in tournament. They are right in the mix, and Anthony Davis was on the court today for what it's worth. They had 2 clear chances to win this game at the end. They were down 2, had 2 open 3-point looks. The first from Klay Thompson, the second from Spencer Dinwiddie, and neither one of them went down to ultimately secure the victory in favor of the Brooklyn Nets there. Now, that is the positive, that we do have that the Sixers now have a game and a half cushion, I guess, in front or back, however you want to look at this here. The bottom line, they have a worse record than the Brooklyn Nets is the takeaway here. Now, on the negative side of things, the New Orleans Pelicans have heard the whispers. They heard the Sixers are coming, that they can out-tank anyone, and they took matters into their own hands. And what we got here was this update from the franchise that the New Orleans Pelicans announced today that CJ McCollum and Zion Williamson will miss the remainder of the 24-25 season due to their respective injuries. McCollum was diagnosed with a right foot bone contusion after sustaining an injury on March 23rd at Detroit. Will continue his rehabilitation process, which includes rest and treatment. Williamson, who suffered a low back bone contusion as a result of the fall during the game on March 19th at Minnesota, will continue his recovery plan, which includes rest and treatment. Now, I got to be honest and sit up here. I can't be too mad at these guys as we're all in the same game. We all know what the situation is, and New Orleans is just doing what's best for them as a franchise. As Joel Embiid and Paul George sit up here ruled out for the season with who knows what their injury status is, I can't be too mad at the Pelicans for doing the same here, but I do think this might shut the door on the Sixers climbing too much farther here. Now, to set exactly where these standings are at this current point in time, that I do want to make it clear that the top 3 slots in the Tankathon rankings here each have the same exact odds here. A 52.1% chance at the top 4 pick, a 14% chance at the number 1 overall pick. The NBA did implement this to try and decrease the tanking that is going on. Despite that, we're seeing it at an all-time high rate. Now, here's where the Sixers come into things. The Pelicans currently sit at 21-54. That is 5.5 games back of that number 1 overall slot here. The Sixers in 5th place. They are 2 games behind them with a 23-52 record there. To lay out the Pelicans schedule from here, and once again, we do know the news that Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum will not be stepping foot on the floor for the remainder of the season. I'm not optimistic they can make up that ground. But the remainder of the Pelicans schedule includes at the Los Angeles Clippers, at the Los Angeles Lakers, versus the Milwaukee Bucks, at the Brooklyn Nets, at the Milwaukee Bucks, versus the Miami Heat, and versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah, I don't quite think there is enough chance for the Sixers to make up ground, but the NBA is a strange sport, and stranger things could happen here. And particularly factoring games like that last game of the season against the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're going to be playing nobody. This Milwaukee Bucks team has been without Damian Lillard, that it just does take a Jose Alvarado heater to maybe have a chance in that game. So I'm not fully closing the door. We'll still be wholeheartedly rooting for the Pelicans to get some victories, but the organization is well aware of the stakes as well. Now, to lay this out from a Sixers perspective here, particularly as it pertains to the Pelicans, to shout out to Sixers Adam, who has been all over the tanking odds as well, and he tweets out, the Nets win again, this time battling the Mavericks. The Sixers now hold a 1.5 game lead on Brooklyn for the number 5 spot in the lottery standings. They're in strong position to avoid falling to number 6 and any possible loss in a random drawing that would happen in the event of a tie. So the exact odds for just straight up keeping the pick, it remaining in the top 6 here, if they finish with the fifth worst record there, they have a 64% chance of keeping the pick. If they are tied for that 5th spot here and they win the random drawing, they'll have a 62.2% chance. If they lose that drawing, a 47.7% chance. If they finish 6th, it would be a 45.8% chance of keeping the pick. Down at 7th, 31.9%. No matter which way you slice it, we are at the mercy of the ping pong balls. That whatever that fateful drawing on March 12th or May 12th, when that ultimately comes down here, we will know the outcome for the Sixers, and that is going to be a huge moment. not just for this season, but really this era of Sixers basketball. If things break right, if they do get to retain the pick, maybe even climb to number one. If Cooper Flag comes to Philadelphia, we're talking about this team being a legitimate championship contender next year. Cooper Flag is that good, and this team, let's not forget what Jared McCain brings to the table. Let's not forget what Tyrese Maxey brings to the table. I am buying the stock that we'll get a better version of Paul George. I don't think he will ever be the max version, what we're paying for, but better than what we saw from him this year, and Joel Embiid, the obvious wild card here. And there are other good players. This is not just Cooper Flag. Sign me up for Ace Bailey. Sign me up for Dylan Harper. Sign me up for VJ Edgecombe. I'm in on Common Malawak here. Con Kneppel looks terrific in the tournament here. We will dive into the rankings for each of these guys here, but you have to get a guy. If things do not break the Sixers' way, which there is a legitimate chance of, they're going to have some really difficult decisions to face from here. I don't know how you build out this roster without just running it back. That I get the frustrations, the immediate gut-wrenching reactions of trade everyone. The Joel Embiid era is over. Get rid of Paul George, and I hear you. I understand why you want that to be the case here, but how? What? Where? Who is taking these guys is sort of my pushback here. That it takes two to tango to make a trade in the NBA, and who in their right mind is signing up to pay Joel Embiid $70 million 4 years from now? I don't think there is another franchise that is taking that gamble, and they all see the exact same things that we do with Joel Embiid, that they see the missed games, they see the injury issues, and frankly, if anything, I would argue from a Philadelphia perspective, we have a bit more sympathy than just viewing that as, is that a guy that we want to hitch our franchise on? Paul George, not quite viewed in the same, not damaged goods category, but he is a guy who is past his prime, signed a lengthy contract, and there's a reason that there was not another NBA team willing to match that type of offer that the Sixers did give there. So my pushback or just comment to be made here, pretty much any way I slice this, I don't see a world in which the Sixers can move on from those guys at least yet. So you got to find a way to get another impact player. And in that same breath of conversation here, the money is still committed to those guys. There is not a do-over. You do not have free cap space that you can just invest in another player. These are the guys you got. I say all this to say, the lottery is going to be huge for the Sixers here. You have to find a way to get a franchise piece. And I do think we'll stick with the Cooper Flag example, as that is obviously the best case scenario here. If we're starting with a trio of Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, and Cooper Flag, you have the foundation of contender there. I understand there's more to be done, that we are looking to the future here, but that's a great place to start, and that is what we have to hope for. So once again, to reflect on those exact odds here, that as things currently stand, and it does feel like they're in a pretty good spot, a significantly better spot than I expected to be the case at this point in the season. They've got a 42.1% chance at a top 4 pick, currently a 10.5% chance at that number 1 pick, and overall to keep the pick sitting right around 64% currently. So still a couple games to go in the season. The Sixers have to continue to hold up their end of the bargain, and they brought in just the guy to do it, as Kyle Lowry, of all people, has been listed as questionable for tomorrow's game against the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden. We have not seen Kyle Lowry in quite some time. I think it's pretty shocking that there's a chance that he steps back on the floor. I think this is pretty likely sort of a farewell tour for Kyle Lowry. I don't think any of us can believe, or the Sixers certainly should not be willing to send him another contract for next year. Shout out to Kyle, an incredibly illustrious and successful career in the wider scale. The Sixers obviously have not had his best years here, that he is on the decline for what he has left in the tank, but I do think there's a pretty likely chance he's hopping right across that white line and joining the coaching staff next year, and would absolutely welcome that. I think he's been an excellent influence on guys like Jared McCain here. He's a guy who has still had his flashes, had his moments, and overall, served a purpose on the Sixers team, even if it was a larger role than he signed on to when he first got here. Let me remind you guys, I think it gets thrown on Kyle Lowry too often for how much he played in the playoffs. That would not have been the case if DeAnthony Melton did not get hurt and have that issue there. Lowry was just the guy that was forced to step in those minutes. But a bit of a mixed bag of results from a lottery perspective here, as it is great that the Brooklyn Nets did pick up another victory, a little breathing room on the backside for the Sixers, that, to reflect on the exact standing once again here, that they do have that little bit of gap, officially a game and a half in the standings here. They could luck into a win in one of these games down the stretch, and it is not the end of the world from that perspective here. Now, with that being said, we will continue to root on the Pelicans, even though they are clearly digging their heels in on what their outlook, and I understand that as well. So ultimately, we will see what happens from here. There's still a lot to get into from the Sixers perspective here in the offseason, is when content will really be heating up, as there will be some monumental decisions to be made from the Sixers, with a lot of the posturing decided on what that draft pick outlook looks like. So keep rocking with me into that point. I understand it has been a brutal year for the Philadelphia 76ers, but I do appreciate you guys continuing to tune in. So as always, want to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video, drop your thoughts below. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.